right, we're here with the book Taking Liberty by Anne Rinaldi, and we're going to read chapter 2. I continued to ask questions. There was much chance to learn and lots of people to learn from. Servants gossiped. They had nothing else to do while they mended, chopped, spun, wove, dipped candles, plucked chickens, and ground meat. Whoops, they ground wheat. Servants, they were never called slaves, were close to anyone at the mansion house. They changed linens, washed them, emptied slops, knew who was sick and why, heard fevered mutterings and whispered prayers. They held secrets. Nathan told me how the general had fought the French when he was a young man in the war, how he fought for the British, and now he was fighting against the British. I minded his words. I wanted to keep it all straight. Nathan told me how the Fairfaxes, who lived in the plantation house next to ours, had been friends of the general since he was a boy, and they'd gone back to England because of the war. He told me how the general's father had died when the general was 11, and his older brother, Lawrence, took him under his wing. I couldn't believe the general had an older brother because I thought the general was God. But then Nathan told me that Lawrence, the older brother, was dead, which I supposed allowed the general to be God. He told me how this place, known as Mount Vernon, was once named Epsawasson, or Little Hunting Creek, by the Indians. That the Potomac was an Indian name too. It means river of swans. But Sambo Anderson told me about Africa. I loved to visit Sambo. He raised lots of chickens that he sold to the mansion house, and his hunting dog could rout out grouse, partridge, and ducks. Most of the children were scared of Sambo. On his brown face, strange markings were cut in. He wore rings in his ears, an owl's claw around his neck. On a winter morning, he sat outside his rude log hut polishing his old British musket that he hunted with. A small fire burned in front of him. On a spit over it, he was roasting a rabbit. A muddy-colored blanket was draped around his shoulders. "Sambo, I come to give you some biscuits from the house." He nodded. "Little girl, like you shouldn't be out in the cold." "Did you hunt last night?" He nodded yes, and pointed to the fowl hanging from a pole. He would sell it to Lady Washington. She counted on his bounty to dress up her table. He liked to hunt at night, like the owl that guided him. Said he could see better at night, and I believed him. I sat near the fire. "Tell me about Africa," I said. I knew what would come first. I had heard it all before. The tribes, the way he said their names, was like the sound of rain pattering softly on the roof. Waidas, Asante, Fanti, Igbo, Coromantee, Ga, Hausa, he said softly, and I waited for more. "Vanished. All vanished," he said. "What does that mean, Sambo?" "Gone. From the Senegal River to the Congo. Half a land away. Hausa lay in ambush, waited to capture Asante. Malenke went to war to capture Coromantee. Old, beautiful Africa puke up its own and sell them for slaves. Hausa make war on my people, burn my village, kill my father. I was bound and sold for 172 cowrie shells, tied to others by a leather thong around my neck, marched for days to the sea." I waited. "My father was Asante king. They burned our village." He sighed and shook his head. "Now I am one of the gone." Then he fell into silence. There would be no more today. You couldn't push Sambo. "Tell me how it was when the general went to the Congress," I begged. Lady Washington had told us, but I liked to hear the way Sambo told it better. He shrugged and humphed. Candles burned all the night in the windows of the mansion house. People come and go. It was summer. News from the north, bad. News from the south, bad. Shadows on the Bowling Green. Paris and Giles and Joe from the stables hold the horses' reins. Generals, which is generals, horse paw the ground, like he knows something nobody else do. Heat, lightning flash, like it did the night they burned my village. Bad sign. Finally, out of the mansion house come the general and that Henry man. Patrick Henry, yes. My dad talked about that man. My daddy liked the way Mr. Henry talked about liberty. And another man named of Pendleton. They come to ride off with the general. The general's lady come out of the house and watch him mount up. Then Billy Lee come from the stables all cocky like, 'cause he riding with the general to Philadelphia. And when he went to war, I pushed. It was April, white fish running. We was planting corn. The general's fish schooner on the river, the herring running good. A rider come up the lane from Johnson's Ferry like the devil be chasing him. We Negroes all gather around and hear that up north they have a fighter outside Boston. The general all excited, everybody all excited. You never see so many visitors as he had here then. This time he gathered us around, tell us to work hard, tell us he could lose everything. We could be taken away in chains, but he going to fight. He go off in the old green carriage with that Mr. Lee and Mr. Carter. Say he be back in July. Well, he ain't come back yet, and the old green carriage fetched home by Mr. Lunn. Sambo chuckled. These white people don't know about war, ride off like gentlemen with lace at their neck to meet and talk. All they do is talk. They don't know how quick you can be one of the gone. Aunt Myrtilla came walking down the path in the quarters, a shawl wrapped tightly around her, calling my name. Oni Judge, where you be? Your mama wants you now. Sambo nodded at me. I set down the biscuits from the kitchen and left. I ran about freely with the other children to Dog Run Farm, Muddy Hole Farm. The general had 5 farms altogether. Mama didn't like me going to Dog Run. She knew the general wanted his people to be Christian. She didn't want me learning the old ways because my future was in the mansion house. At Dog Run, they had a Reverend Will who practiced the old African religion, besides preaching about Jesus. On Dog Run, the slaves had night meetings in the gullies, and for those meetings, Reverend Will was the keeper of the wash pot. At night meetings, they'd turn the pot over so the sound of their secret prayers would go under it. And Dog Run had old Cinda, who conjured, which I believe that means like they would call up dead spirits. Cinda was another saltwater Negro, born in Africa, like Sambo. We children loved to visit her. She could read the insides of a chicken to tell the future. She could make conjure bags out of red flannel filled with ground up toads' heads and gopher dust, which was a graveyard dirt. She had a conch shell she said she had brought with her from Africa. Water bring us here, water take us home, she'd said. She told us never to let anyone get a piece of our hair. The hair is the most powerful thing your enemy can get hold of, she says as we gathered around her. It grow near the brain, and anybody who get a hold of it can make your brain crazy. She told us that if the general and Lady Washington had let her put a fix on Patsy, she would not have died. That Patsy girl go crazy, she said. She got fits 'cause spiders walk up and down in her body. I could have helped her, but no, they don't want old Cinda near the big house. That Patsy girl, she die, 'cause of some sin her father do." I made the mistake of telling Mama this, and she switched me. "That Mr. Custis, Patsy's daddy, was quality," she said, "and you don't ever say such. And you stay away from Dog Run." But I still sneaked away and visited old Cinda. I recollect the way Cinda looked at me one day when I visited. "This child gonna be free one day," she said. "This child gonna have trials, but she gonna be free." I shivered. Did it mean my daddy would take me with him when he was no longer bound to the Washingtons? But I soon put the thought in the back of my mind. It was One-Handed Charles who told me how Master Jackie came to Dog Run one day to ask old Cinda to conjure for him. One-Handed Charles liked to brag that he was the last slave the general purchased in '72 from Mr. Massey. "I come for only 30 pounds, 'cause I got only one hand." But why did Master Jackie want old Cinda to conjure? I asked. He has everything he wants at the mansion house. "'Cause he be wanting to get betrothed to Miss Nellie Cavert. He was only 18. She was 16. And there was carrying on at the mansion house for days when he told his stepfather, the general, he want to leave school. Everybody knew to stay clear. Master Jackie come begging old Cinda for some hush water in a jug so he could give it to the general to drink and quiet him down." "What's hush water?" "Just plain water. What they fix, so if you drink it, you'll be nice." But everybody knows conjure doesn't work on white people, I argued. One-Handed Charles shook his head. "That's still up for speculation. Old Cinda give Master Jackie powders and charms in a bag to put under the general's bed." "Did it work?" "Is Master Jackie wed to Miss Nellie Cavert?" "Yes. The general come riding over here when he find out Master Jackie visit. Say nothing about conjure. Complained that the carrots was too thin that year. The Timothy not good enough. He in a temper all right, but Master Jackie, he get wed come February." This was how I learned about life around me, the past of both the whites and the Negroes. It all became my past. Sometimes I mixed up people in Virginia society with African tribes. When there was fear, after the general left, that the British would come up to the Potomac and seize Lady Washington and burn the place, I saw in my head Sambo Anderson's village burned by the Hausa tribe. I saw Lady Washington with a leather thong around her neck marched for miles to the sea. My nightmares were about the general's horse pawing the ground, heat lightning flashing overhead, and Patsy rolling on the floor in fits because spiders were crawling up and down inside her body. When you learn about someone, hear their stories, you tote them around. They flow in your blood and in your dreams. They become a part of you, so that when something bad happens to you, there is something to liken it to. I know someone else it happened to, and he still lives and breathes. So when I was 4 and my daddy left, I cried, but I understood. He became part of the gone. That concludes Chapter 2 of Taking Liberty.